Hello, everybody. Well, it's Sunday, and I wanted to do this video early for you guys. I'm gonna make this next module two. There's going to be a 2-day thing. I'd like the first assignment to be your notes. So please, type up your notes on a Word document and then hand that in. And then your second day will be finishing the questions and the FRQs. So some stuff came out from the AP about your AP. So if I'm reading correctly, I think I read it twice. It seemed like there's something like a 45-minute test that you're going to take from the comfort of your homes, and so you don't have to actually come in. That was my reading of it. It's only up to intelligence, so it's gonna, only up to, intelligence. So it's gonna leave off therapy, disorders, and social psych. So what I'll do is, if it continues to be like, I'm teaching you guys from home, we may start reviewing after we finish intelligence, which is the next unit. So we'll do 2 tests. You'll basically have 2 more tests. You'll have the test on personality, and then a test on intelligence. Still, probably use AP Classroom to give you those quizzes, and you can do them online, and you can hand those in. And plus, these daily things are probably going to count for a good chunk of your grade. So anyways, that's as far as I know. Apparently, April 3rd, they're going to have some solid dates about what's what. So on that day, I'll kind of know what day we're going to have the AP and stuff. So, hopefully that's about as much information as I can give you. So they're basically lopping off for us 3 units from our test. So all we have to get to for the test is intelligence, and then after you take the AP, I will continue to teach those final units. So and I'll give you those grades. So same idea. Most of your grade, if it's still online, is probably going to be these daily things, these daily little activities. So every week is basically a test. Like, it's going to count to be a test because it's 20 points every day. So anyways, I wanted to kind of keep going in module 58. I'll do 2 different videos for this. So I'll split this into I'll split it into halves, and I'll also send you a. It's kind of neat. It's actually a little online assessment that you can do, a personality inventory. Kind of like what we're going to learn is the MMPI, and that actually gives you what I was talking about before with Canoe. It'll give you a reading on your personality traits, and it is pretty good at predicting your behaviors. So I'll go through those with you as well. Okay. So anyways, we're first going to start with the trait perspective. So the trait perspective. So now we've done psychoanalytic, psychodynamic, the humanistic, and now we're talking about traits. This is usually, for personality, this is the one we usually deal with. And there's a few kind of like people that have sort of gone by the wayside. There's Gordon Allport, there's Hans Eysenck. What they did was they actually had 2 professors two researchers who came up with different forms of finding out about personality, and they rated you. I believe Allport had like 16 different kind of words for you, or it was like 16 or 32 personality factors. It was a lot. And then Eysenck only had 2. So what they've kind of settled on are McRae and Costa's Let me see if you can see that a little bit better. Sorry. McRae and Costa's Big Five. So that's, if you ever see any question about trait psychologists, these two are trait psychologists, but they had kind of too many, too few, and McRae and Costa seems to be like the gold standard right now for what people are using for personality. Now, some of you actually may have taken a Myers-Briggs. This is, so a Myers-Briggs test, my dad actually, when he was working, they give these Myers-Briggs tests. They're really expensive, actually. And they'd give them, and you'd get back these personality traits like extrovert, introvert, judger, feeler. I don't know. There's all these different, you can look that up too. Maybe I'll send you a link to that. But the Myers-Briggs is kind of an interesting tool that they use at work and different clubs and stuff and groups to see your personality, and then they would build teams based on your personality. So if you had like a leadership personality, you don't want to put a group filled with leaders and no followers. Like you have to have somebody who's going to be the leader, or a few leaders, and then you'd have a couple followers and stuff, and that's the way they build their teams. And you'd have kind of like a check-off list of what sort of personality trait is going to be the person in a particular group or whatever. So but this is good to know. It's not really seen in like psych departments or in colleges. They usually use the MMPI. Okay. So, let me give you a little bit of terminology here that was stated. Okay, so traits you can look up, but traits are characteristic pattern. I'm just literally reading the definition. Characteristic pattern of behavior or a disposition to feel and act as assessed by a self-report inventory and a peer report. So the things that describe you basically are considered traits. And one particularly helpful way of figuring out your traits, and also this shows up in intelligence quite a bit, is factor analysis. And you will hear me say this in intelligence, the next unit. The big idea is looking for clusters that relate to each other. So in Alport, in iSync, they use these they use this statistical tool called factor analysis, which looks at like clumps of things that seem to be related together. So like for instance, someone, if you wrote down like if they gave you a personality inventory and said likes doing homework right after you get home from school, and you check agree, and then there's another one that says let's say always remembers birthdays, and you hit agree, chances are those would be two things that would relate to each other. So it's a statistical tool to kind of relate different questions that kind of guide you towards a particular type of trait, or what they would call a trait. Okay, so good term to know. And then also the personality inventory. Okay. Okay. So the main idea of the Big Five and all the other two people were what they used the MMPI, which is empirically derived. That's not saying the Myers-Briggs isn't empirically derived. I mean, there's been so much data out there now that, of course, they definitely have done quite a bit of kind of statistical analysis of the Myers-Briggs. But the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory is truly empirically derived, and what that means is they've they've sort of used the answers of others and the information that they've found from other people, like basically numbers, and kind of put them together into forming a test. So it says empirically derived is testing a pool of items, and selecting. Read this. Okay, selecting those that discriminate between groups. Okay. And the MMPI is sort of, again, it's the Big Five and the MMPI. These are your gold standards for trait psychology. And it's basically using values, using numbers and previous information to guide them on kind of laying out whatever your traits would technically be. So, okay. I do want to go through a minute in time. Good. Okay. So, I do want to go through a few things about the Big Five, and then I'll give you guys the last little bit. So maybe I'll do a few of these. These are pretty neat, actually. So you'll probably like finding out a little bit about yourself with the Big Five. But so we'll mention CA. Remember, the whole thing is canoe, but conscientiousness. So a person who is conscientious tends to remember things that are important. You know, like what do you have to do, today, tomorrow, like have a sheet. You remember birthdays. You never forget your homework. You never forget, like any test that's coming up, any big event that's supposed to happen. Like you got it all marked down. Like you're good to go. If you are not conscientious, you probably just kind of winging it. Not saying like that always is associated with lower grades, but it actually, on average, is. If you have low conscientiousness, it probably means like tend to forget your homework. Again, dryer's done. You forget your homework. You forget people's birthdays. You forget anniversaries. Not this guy though. And but that's conscientiousness, right? The next one is agreeableness. Now, out of all of these, so the other ones, neuroticism, openness, and extroversion, out of all of these, this is probably my top, my highest rated thing is agreeable. I tend to get along with people. I don't like disagreements. I don't like fights. And so if you're one of those, like, everybody be calm, everybody, relax, let's talk it out. And everybody kind of, never has any problems with you. You hardly ever get any fights. That's an agreeable person. Now, the reverse of that, I'm sure we all know people that are not agreeable. They tend to like to argue and maybe not as easy to get along with. That's your low agreeableness. And I hope you kind of see, like, there's different ranges of these things. Most people are kind of like right around the middle, but you kind of, veer off to one side or the other. So you might be kind of conscientious and you might be kind of agreeable. Like, but then there's people that are like super conscientious that, every T is crossed and I is dotted. Like that is a super conscientious person. And then there's the other side where like they forget everything, And then agreeableness There's, the people that never get in fights, never want any problems, and then there's people that like can't seem to get along with anybody. So so what we'll do is I'll show you the last three, and I'll send you the link so you can have a better idea of what I was talking about. Okay, so I'm getting markers, and the other side of this chalkboard there's a whiteboard, so we'll see if that works any better because my hands get all dirty. So all right, make sure you if you're going to exercise, go out on your own, go for a walk, go for a run, listen to a podcast, read a book. The book, The Body, is really good. I'm really enjoying it. And even if you're not all that interested in biology, it's the guy, Bill Bryson, writes it in a way that's really, really interesting and fun to read. You'll find yourself kind of just gravitating towards wanting to go back. So anyways, see you soon.